Welcome everybody back to Boost Motion, guys, and today I want to talk about test pipes and high flow cats. This is going to be a video for the VQ guys, the Q50 VQ guys. This could also apply to your G37 and 370Z guys or 350Z guys. But guys, let's jump into the video. First thing, shout out to my whole Boost Motion family. Much love. I appreciate you guys for the support. So I know that you guys have purchased your VQ, whichever car it is. I'll even throw in there the FX or QX series cars with the 3.7. Now, a lot of these test pipes or high flow cats are actually interchangeable between the different models. Nissan Infiniti wanted to make everything cheap and easy so they could manufacture one part that could go from one car to the next. So that's why test pipes and high flow cats are interchangeable. Now, for the guys like us, we know that some of us want to modify the car. We want to make some changes. We want to see if we can free up some horsepower, if you know what I mean. So one of the top most done modifications other than axle back on the VQ is test pipes and or high flow cats. So what are we going to do? Why should we apply it? And should we even care about touching this? Now, here's a disclaimer. Depending on what state you live in, we're talking about the United States here. Some states, they don't allow you to remove the catalytic converter. Technically, this is actually against the law. It's actually supposed to be a federal crime. But we do what we want, right? So we're supposed to keep the catalytic converters because it's supposed to filter the exhaust gases so we can save the duckies and save the ozone. But people like us, we know that it restricts the power of the vehicle, especially when you know that you want to get tuned. You want to make some additional ponies, if you know what I mean. All right? So you have two choices when you want to remove this catalytic converters because it yields additional power. You have test pipes, which are usually catless, or there's no cat at all, just pipe. Or two, you get high flow cats, right? Where you replace the OEM cats with high quality high flow cats that still exhaust amount of gases without hindering performance at higher RPM. All right. Now, understanding whatever state you're in, this will apply to pretty much your state's laws. In New York City, technically we're not supposed to remove it, but as long as the car doesn't have a check engine light, we're pretty much okay. As long as our emission stuff is okay when you scan the car. But like California, I would assume would be a lot different. Or if you live in Florida, you can just do whatever you freaking want, right? But my opinion, your first question you're going to ask is, which one will yield more power? Because high flow cats are usually more expensive. If you want to know, test pipes usually yield more high-end wheel horsepower. But we're talking about single digits here, guys. You might have one setup where you do a test pipe with your 3-inch exhaust or 2.5-inch exhaust, whatever you would choose to do. Also, check the video that I'm probably going to drop or talked about with catback exhaust for the Q50. Go check that out and see which ones I recommend. But if you have a catless a test pipe on your VQ motor, right, understand that there's no more catalyst material. So you're going to get the full amount of performance. But if you go with a high flow cat right after and doing a high flow cat, it may be single digits, like 5 wheel horsepower difference. Now, does 5 wheel horsepower really apply to the real world? Not really. It really doesn't. I'm just hearing me out. Like, I'm talking about from my VQ days with like Maximas. Like, I used to race other Maxima guys and we had very similar setups. I had full headers, 2.5-inch exhaust, and another guy would have like he'll have shorty headers with high flow cats. And it's like we're literally dead neck and neck. Like, it was very minimal. It really came down to weight at that point, right? So that's why I don't want you guys to get caught in the weeds when it comes to going catless and or with test pipes. Now, understand there's a downfall of test pipes, which is noise. And you may smell a little bit more smell because you're not filtering the gases. And then lastly, check engine light if you don't get tuned. Or if you get tuned, they don't tune the car properly. The reason being is you remove catalytic material, so the oxygen sensor picks up that they're not working properly because they're not there. So this can actually affect and hinder the performance of the car, where you will get shittier gas mileage. And technically, you think you're getting wheel horsepower, but you're really not. So you're actually supposed to get tuned when you do full test pipes. Now, high flow cats. So pretty much with high flow cats, it's different cell counts, right? It goes from like 100 to like 500. And from what I remember, as the number increases, that's more restricted that the catalyst material is. Now, understand, every cell count has a flow restriction, or they would sit there and say, how much horsepower can it filter out? So if it's like because you have two catalyst materials on one side, and this car is a 300 horsepower car. That means one side is pushing out at the most 150 horsepower. Just think about it that way. Some of this catalytic material can flow up to 500 horsepower. So to sit there and think, oh my God, like this one says cell count of like 100 or 200, it's restricting power. Sometimes it really isn't, because it's flow enough that it could handle that amount of horsepower on that end, or exhaust gases, or cubic inches of exhaust, right? Compared to like a turbo car, which would be a lot different, you know? So sometimes in these cases, the high flow cats are, like I said, going to be very similar. It isn't going to be as restrictive as we think it's going to be, right? Also, another benefit with going to high flow is, well, then once again, smell. It filters out the exhaust gases. And then the next one, you should not get a check engine light when you put in high flow cats, unless somehow you cause any damage while during the installation, or there's exhaust leak. But other than that, when you put in a high flow cat, it's supposed to run properly, unless it's like 100 cell. If correct me wrong, anybody in the chat, I think it's 100 or 200 cell, where it's very minimal amount of Catless material there, where the oxygen sensors may pick it up and be like, hey, we don't see that there's much of an issue, but there's something here, and you should check it out. Check engine light. So once you get tuned on 91, 93, or E85 or race gas, the power difference will be very minimal. Now, I do want to add this other part into this part of the video. This last part is this. I'll be honest with y'all. Well, the stock OEM header, or the exhaust pipe, or exhaust manifold that comes off the exhaust ports, they are designed pretty well from factory, especially in the Q50. Now, if we compare it to like the 350Z back in the day, if you guys look up photos of different exhaust manifolds from the old VQs to new VQs, you can see that the Infiniti that chooses, or Nissan that chooses to design a lot of these with better exhaust manifolds from factory. That's what I'm assuming, that they actually gain a little bit more performance over the years, right? Now, you could also replace the OEM headers with aftermarkets, but their design is very similar to OEM. So I don't really think you're going to yield that much more performance from the base on the headers, because they really don't design them to have scavenging effect. You guys can go look that up, scavenging effect, on YouTube on exhaust, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And their runners, or their exhaust ports, aren't really that much more larger. So I think it's more of a look thing. That's really it. Now, I'll end it by saying this. You can choose to skip exhaust test pipes and go with something even a little bit more unique. You can go with long tube headers if you choose to. Usually, long tube headers will replace the style of header from the OEM headers, and it also replaces that section of Catless, or where the test pipe would go, and it'll come right off that all the way to the cat back. Usually, long tube headers perform the best because they design them so that the exhaust ports, every piping, is additionally a little bit wider, and they design it to have scavenging effect, which is actually supposed to create like a vacuum based on the exhaust pulses in each different exhaust port or runner on the header. So it comes from three pipes to one pipe, usually 2.5 inch, and then that goes into the rest of the exhaust 2.5 inch and out. Now, this is theoretically the best setup if you want to yield the most amount of performance out of your VQ motor, because it flows the best. There's nothing more OEM. They gave you pretty much a complete aftermarket exhaust. And if I ever was to do a VQ Q50 or a 3.7Z or G37, I would actually want to do long tube headers, because I think it's one of the most unique things, and it actually sets you apart from everyone else's setup. Now, long tube headers will yield the most performance. From dynos, it seemed like long tube headers will give you additional power over just the test pipes. I've seen between 5 to 10 more wheel horsepower. But once again, these are very minimal power gains. But, in the real world, it may actually yield a little bit. If with the proper setup and the proper exhaust, you would be a little bit faster. But it ain't going to be enormously faster. Will be just quicker than the next guy that has on test pipes. That's it. That's what it would be. And it will give you a slightly different noise depending on the exhaust setup that you have. But other than that, if you had to list it from test pipes, high flow cats, or go with long tube headers, the best bang for his buck is still going to be the test pipe. It's the most cheapest, it's easiest to install. You don't have to remove the header. If you want to get the most amount of performance out of your VQ, long tube headers, but it's the most expensive. And there's no more Catless material. So it's basically still like a test pipe. You're still going to run and check engine lights. If you want to gain the less amount of performance, but be better, closest to OEM as possible, but still have additional performance and save the duckies and save the ozone, you would go with a high flow cat on stocky headers. We can do that too. And it won't yield as much performance, but you're definitely going to have better performance over every other setup. And honestly, when it comes to VQ motors, the exhaust is where you make most of the power, honestly. once you go with a proper exhaust and then you tune the car, you can see an additional 30 to 40 more wheel horsepower just on the tune alone, because these cars are tuned very conservatively from factory. So there's a lot of power still left on the table when you choose to go with these exhaust modifications, and then of course you go with a tune 91, 93, and then if you choose to, E85. So outside of that, guys, you guys have a good morning, good afternoon, good night. Hopefully I gave you guys an informational video. Understand there's different brands out there that you can go with, and majority of them are good brands. So trust them. All right? I appreciate you guys. You guys have a good day. Thank you.